Hi everyone in Algebra 2B. Today we're going to be going over the new material in lesson 100, which is the graph of parabolas. And when we're doing this, we are going to need to remember how to complete the square. So a parabola is going to be a graph of a quadratic equation, so an equation that contains x squared as the highest power. And the shape of a parabola is going to look like a U. So it's either going to be up if it's positive or down if it's negative. So a couple things you need to know about a parabola is that every parabola is going to have an axis of symmetry, meaning that it's symmetrical about one line, and that's that dotted line in the center. And then that's going to start on a vertex, and that will be a point on this line. And then a parabola is either going to open up or down. So up if it's positive, and then down if it's negative. So now, the equation of a parabola is going to be this. Y is equal to plus or minus x minus h squared plus k. So this square tells me it's going to be a parabola. Plus or minus is going to tell me that it's going to open up or down. So if it's positive, it opens up. If it's negative, it points down. This is going to be your axis of symmetry. This tells us the axis of symmetry. So you're going to set whatever's in parentheses equal to 0, and that will be where it's going to cross the x-axis. So where on the x-axis that you're going to draw your parabola. And then the vertex is where you're going to start your parabola, so the number on the outside. So this equation does need to be written down somewhere. Also, this chart right here is going to tell us how to graph the parabola. So how far away from the vertex you're going to go. So if it's a positive, you're going to go away from the vertex over 1 up 1, over 2 up 4, over 3 up 9. You only really need to know the first two because these are the only two that we're really going to use. This would be used for later on when we're factoring out a number. So this is the equation that we're trying to get. And then I'll explain to you how you're going to come up with your parabola from there. So this one says complete the square to graph. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to put all the x's in parentheses. Leave a space and then do your plus 2. So this is what you're going to complete the square with. Remember that when you're completing the square, you take the term that's attached to x and multiply it by 1/2. And that would become minus 2. Now negative 2 squared is plus 4, so I would put plus 4 back up here. But here's the trick, is if you add 4 on the inside, you need to do the opposite to the outside. So if I added 4 here, I would have to subtract 4 from the outside. So on the outside, I have 2 minus 4, which would be negative 2. Now the plus sign on the outside, there's nothing on the outside, so that means it's going to be a plus sign, so it's going to open upwards. So I'm going to show myself that it's going to face up like that, like a happy face. Now my x minus h is my axis of symmetry, so I set that equal to 0. So I'm going to set x minus 2 equal to 0, which would give me x is equal to 2. That's where I'm going to draw my dotted line for my axis of symmetry. And this will be my vertex. So let's see how you graph this. So I'm going to go to positive 2 on the x-axis, which would be right here, and I'm going to draw a dotted line through that. Then I'm going to put a point at negative 2. So on this axis of symmetry, I'm going to go down 2. And that's going to be my vertex. That's where I'm starting my parabola. Now I'm going to refer back to this chart. So because it's going to point up, I'm going to go over 1 and then up 1 on both sides, over 1, up 1, and then over 2, up 1, 2, 3, 4, and then over 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is going to be your diagram of your parabola. Okay, so you use this chart. There's a lot of information, but this is all stuff that you're going to need to know, especially when you move on to Algebra 3 next year. Okay, so now we're going to do 100.2. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to put all the x's in parentheses. This one's going to be a little different than the last one. because you can't complete the square if your x squared has something attached to it. So you're going to factor out the minus sign, and that would make that x squared minus 2x, and then plus 2 on the outside. Now I'm going to complete the square. So half the term attached to x, so half of this negative 2 would be negative 1. And that would be x minus 1 squared. When you square 1, you get plus 1. But you factored out this minus sign, so this is actually a negative 1 here. So when you do the opposite to the outside, if this is a negative 1, the opposite of negative 1 would be plus 1. So plus 3. So remember on the last one, I added 4, so I had to subtract 4. This one, because there's a minus sign attached to it, it's essentially me kind of doing the same thing on both sides, but it's because that this is actually a negative 1 right here. Now, this sign tells me that it's going to be a sad face parabola, so it's going to face down like that. My x minus 1, I'm going to set equal to 0 to find my axis of symmetry, and that will be at x is equal to positive 1. And this right here is going to be my vertex, so where I'm going to start. So I'm going to go to positive 1 on the axis, and I'm going to put a dotted line there. And then I'm going to put a dot at up 3. 1, 2, 3. Now it's a sad face parabola, so I'm going to go back to this chart right here, the 1, 1, 2, 4. So from there, I'm going to go over 1, down 1. Or over 2, down 1, 2, 3, 4. So over 1, down 1, over 2, down 4. And I'm going to make a sad face parabola. And that is going to be your graph of your diagram. It's going to take a lot of practice, so don't get frustrated if it's something that's really difficult right now. It will start to become a little bit more natural as you continue to work on it. So now we're going to look at the next example before I have you try one on your own. So the first thing I'm going to do is you're going to put all your x's in parentheses. Again, because there's a minus sign attached to the x squared, you have to factor that out. And remember that you have to factor it out of both terms, so that makes this x squared plus 6x. And then we have minus 8. Then when we complete the square, half of 6 is going to be 3, so that would be plus 3. But when I square 3, that's plus 9. But remember that this is a negative 9, so the opposite of negative 9 would be plus 9. So you're going to plus 9 on the outside. So it kind of looks like you're adding 9 on both of them, but you're not. It's the opposite. So 9 minus 8 would be 1. Now this negative sign tells me it's going to be a sad face parabola. This is going to tell me my axis of symmetry, so I'm going to set x plus 3 equal to 0. So x will be negative 3, and this plus 1 is going to be my vertex. So at negative 3, it's going to be my axis of symmetry, and then at positive 1, that's going to be my vertex. Now I'm going to refer back to my chart right here, which tells me that for my vertex, I'm going to go over 1, down 1, and then over 2, down 1, 2, 3, 4. You're going to do the same thing on both sides. So over 1, down 1, and then over 2, down 4. And then you're going to connect the dots. And that should be the shape of your parabola. Now I want you to pause this video, and we are going to do numbers 6, 7, 9, and 10 together. 6, 7, 9, and 10, and that's just a review of the last few lessons. So pause the video, attempt those problems, and then press unpause when you're ready to try them with me. So for number 6, the first thing that we're going to do is you're going to put all the x's in parentheses. Now you're going to complete the square, so you're going to take half the term attached to x, which would be half of -6, which is -3. When you square that, you're going to get +9. We didn't factor anything out, so if I add 9, I have to do the opposite to the outside, which would be subtract 9. 1 minus 9 would be -8. And for this one, because you didn't factor anything out, it's a positive parabola, so it's positive, and it's going to face up like this. The x minus 3 is going to be your axis of symmetry, so you're going to set that equal to 0. So your axis of symmetry is going to be x is equal to 3. And this -8 will be your vertex, where you're going to start on the axis of symmetry. So if you go to your diagram, you're going to go to +3 and you're going to make a dotted line. And then on that dotted line, you're going to make a point at -8. So down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's a happy face parabola. So from there, you're going to go use your chart right here, which is 1, 1, and then 2, 4. So from this point, you're going to go over 1, up 1, over 1, up 1, over 2, up 1, 2, 3, 4. And do the same on both sides. And you're going to connect the dots. And that will be your parabola. Now moving on, we're going to look at number 7. So a similar type of problem. I'm going to start by putting all my x's in parentheses. And then leaving the +4 on the outside. I have to factor out the minus sign, so that would become x squared. This would become -4x. Now we're going to complete the square. So half the term that's attached to x. So half of -4 would be -2. Then we're going to square that value. So -2 squared is +4. But remember that you factored out this minus sign, so this is actually -4. So we're going to have to add 4 to the outside, which becomes +8. Now this negative sign tells me it's going to be a sad face parabola and face down. The x minus 2 will be your axis of symmetry, so if you set it equal to 0, we're going to get x is equal to 2. And this +8 is going to be your vertex. So going over to my diagram, I'm going to go over to +2, make a dotted line. And then I'm going to go up 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which is all the way at the top here. And now we're going to use this chart again. So 1, 1, and then 2, 4. So over 1, down 1 in both directions. And then over 2, down 1, 2, 3, 4. Same on both sides, and then you're going to connect the dots. And that will be your diagram for that parabola. Now moving on, this is going to be a review from your last lesson from the graph of the absolute value. So for the graph of the absolute value, we're going to start by just solving for that absolute value. But I'm going to deal with this inequality, which means that I need to flip it and take away the equal sign because there's that slash through it. Then I'm going to move the 5 to the other side, so subtract 5. Then when you divide by negative, that flips the inequality again. So this would be the absolute value of x is less than 2. So now, remember that if your absolute value is less than a whole number, you're going to connect the 2 points, but your 2 points will be on the positive of that value and the negative of that value. And then you're going to connect them. So my 2 points are going to be at -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3. We're doing real, so it is going to be just a point with an arrow. So I'm going to leave an open circle on 2 and -2 because there's no equal sign. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to connect those 2 points with a line. And that would be your result for number 9. So go back to your notes for the graphing the absolute value. This is what I used, the notes that I used right there. Now moving on, we're going to look at number 10, which is another review problem. And we're going to refer back to lesson 98. And this is the equation you're going to use. So the number is equal to the first plus the fraction times the second minus the first. And that's from lesson 98. So the number is equal to the first plus the fraction times the second minus the first. And the order in which it shows up is going to be fraction, first, and second. So my first number is going to be 2 1/3. My fraction is going to be 5/11. My second number is going to be 3 1/6 minus 2 1/3. And before I get started on this problem, I'm actually going to make all my mixed numbers into improper fractions. So this is going to become 7/3 plus 5/11 times 19/6 minus 7/3. And in order to combine these fractions, I do need to make a common denominator and leave everything else the same. So 7/3 plus 5/11 times, and this would be 19 minus 14, which would be 5/6. We can't simplify that all, so that would become 7/3 plus 25/66. So the common denominator is going to be 66. So I need to multiply top and bottom by 22. So that's going to become 154/66 plus 25/66. And that would give us 179/66. And if I wanted to write this as a mixed number, it would be 2 47/66. So either one of these answers would be sufficient. And that concludes your new material from lesson 99. No, actually lesson 100. Hope you guys all have a great day. Bye.